Hello everyone. So our today's topic of discussion is interest. In this video or in this lecture, what we'll be doing is, first of all, we'll be understanding what exactly is interest. What do you mean by interest? Then we're going to understand two different type of interest. The first one is simple interest and the second one is known as compound interest. So once we understand simple interest, we'll be solving questions on the formulas or on the topic simple interest. This topic simple interest is not that difficult as the name suggests simple, so it's quite simple to understand also. There are only two things which you need to remember in this entire topic, and questions are pretty straightforward. Once done with that, then we'll move on to the compound interest. We'll understand what exactly is compound interest, how compound interest is different from simple interest, what are the formulas, what are the different ways of calculating compound interest, what are the different cases in which we can calculate compound interest, and then we'll be solving questions based on that also. So frankly, we'll have to cover up a lot of theory part because there are a lot of things which you need to understand. So it's not only the formulas that we will be discussing, we'll understand exactly what the topic is all about, okay? And then we'll be solving the question. So probably I believe that it's going to take me two videos to complete the entire topic, so that you have a crystal clear understanding of both the topics and you are able to solve the questions in the exam also. All right. So let's start with the detailed discussion of the topic interest. Okay. So first of all, what do you mean by interest? Before even we start with this topic simple interest, let's talk about what do you mean by the term interest. So interest is basically the additional amount paid or gained with the principal amount. So let me give you a very simple example. Let's suppose you go to a bank and you ask bank for a loan. Let's suppose you go to a bank and you ask them, okay, I want $1,000 loan. I want $1,000 loan. Now, while returning it back to the bank, you will not only be returning the $1,000, but you will also be returning some additional money because they have helped you. So you will be returning some additional money also. This additional money that you will be returning is known as interest. This is known as interest. So it is gained by the bank, it is paid by you, or basically whomsoever is the customer. So what is interest? Interest is basically the additional amount paid or gained with the principal amount. Okay, this is the principal amount, which is basically the amount which is given as a loan or taken as a loan. Basically, that is basically what principal is all about. Okay. Now, when you talk about interest, there are like two types of interest. The first one is known as the simple interest, and the second one is known as compound interest. So what exactly is simple interest? Let's try and understand that. Now, when you talk about the term simple interest, now we know the meaning of the term interest. So what is simple interest? Simple interest is an interest which is calculated only on the principal amount. Or let me be a bit more specific to you, which is calculated only on the initial principal amount. Which is calculated only on the initial principal amount. Which means simple interest throughout will remain constant. That is, simple interest for the first year will be equal to simple interest for second year, will be equal to simple interest for third year, and so on and so forth. Why? Because your initial principal amount will never change. Your initial principal amount will never change. If your initial principal amount is not changing, then your interest is also not changing. Then your simple interest is also not changing. So it's an interest which is calculated only on the initial principal amount. How do you calculate simple interest? If you want to calculate simple interest, then SI is equal to P into R into T divided by 100, where P is the principal the amount which is taken up as a loan or offered as a loan. R is the rate of interest. Like at what rate of interest the loan is given or the loan is taken, that is what the rate of interest is. T is the time period. Now it's very simple to calculate simple interest with, like there is, it's a very simple formula. You simply have to plug in the values and that's it. Okay, there is no hidden thing in this formula or in this relationship. It's quite straightforward. The only thing that you have to take into consideration while you're calculating simple interest is that the unit of rate of interest, now what do you mean by unit? So when you talk about rate of interest is usually in percentage per annum. Like for example, the loan is taken at a rate of 8% per annum or 10% per annum. That means the interest that you will be calculating will be 8% of the principal amount for 1 year, or it will be 10% of the principal amount for 1 year. This is what is meant by the rate of interest. Okay. Now, usually it is in per annum, but that can be given to you. The rate of interest can also be percent per month. It can also be in percent per month also. That is quite possible. So this is how you write the unit of rate of interest. Similarly, when you talk about time period, your time period can be in years, your time period can also be in months. So the bottom line is the unit of rate of interest and the unit of time period. The two things have to be in sync with each other. Have to be in sync with each other. That basically means that if your rate of interest is in percent per annum, you'll have to take time in years. And if the unit of rate of interest is in percent per month, then you have to take time in months, or the vice versa. Like for example, if I give you a question that let's say an amount of $50 is invested at an annual rate of 10% at an annual rate of 10% for 7 months. Find the interest earned. An amount of $50 is invested at an annual rate of 10% for 7 months. Find the interest earned. Okay. Now you cannot use this, you cannot like simply plug in the values. Okay, in place of principal you put $50, in place of rate of interest you will put 10, and in place of time you will put 7. No, this would be incorrect. Why? Because understand, your rate of interest is percent per annum and your time period is in months. So you cannot simply do P into 10 or 50 into 10 into 7 by 12. That would be incorrect. So what you will do is, either you will convert this 10% per year to 10 by 12% per month, or you will convert 7 months to 7 by 12 years, because the units have to be in sync with each other. The units have to be in sync with each other. So now you can say that your simple interest will be 50 into 10 into 7 by 12 divided by 100, or you could have done it like 50 into 10 by 12 into 7 divided by 100. Either way, okay, do not convert both of them. So we need to ensure one thing while we are calculating simple interest, that is the unit of rate of interest and the time period have to be in sync with each other. Okay. Now, apart from calculating simple interest, they can also ask you to calculate one more thing, and that is to calculate the final amount. So the final amount is always the principal plus the interest plus the interest. So these are the two relationships that you need to know, and this is one concept that you need to know. These are the only three things that you need to know if you want to solve a question on simple interest. That's it, nothing else. Okay, so let's start with something simple. So pause the video and try this question, please. Alright, let's try this one. So Molly deposited $4,000 in a bank account only for 8 months. The bank gave her simple interest at 7% per annum. What would be the final amount received by Molly after 8 months? Now the only thing you have to take into consideration is, okay, this is fine, this is principle, you don't have to worry about it. That time period is in months, 8 months, and the simple interest is percent per annum, that is, it's an yearly rate or it's an annual rate. It is an yearly rate or an annual rate. So either convert months to years or either convert percent per annum to percent per month. It's your call. So the simple interest, that's the first thing that you need to calculate. That will be P into R into T divided by 100. So that's like 4,000 into 8 by 12 into 7 by 100. Or you can do it in this way, that is 4,000 into 8 into 7 by 12 divided by 100. So two zeros goes, this will become 2, this will become 3. So 47 into 428, this is 560 by 3. And this when you'll calculate, you will again get 560 by 3. Now the question does not end here because the question is asking for the amount. What we have calculated is the interest. So your final amount becomes 4,000 plus 560 by 3. So that is 12,000 plus 560 by 3. So that is 12,560 by $3. And that's your final answer to this question. Alright, let's move on to question number 2. Just remember these three things, guys. That's it. This 1, this 2, and this 3. That's it. Nothing else is required for simple interest. It's pretty simple to calculate. Okay. Pause the video and try this question, please. Again, the same type of question. So if a simple interest is given every month on $4,000 at a rate of R% per annum, annual rate, find the amount after 4 months. So what I'll do is, I have an annual rate of R% per annum. So I'm going to convert this to R by 12% per month. R by 12% per month. Now you can calculate the interest first of all for 4 months, then add it to the principal, you will get the amount. So simple interest for 4 months will basically become 4,000 into R by 12 into 4 divided by 100. So this becomes 3 and this will basically become 40 R by 3. And the final amount will simply be equal to 4000 plus 40 r by 3. That's your answer. And you could have taken like 40 common, like different ways of writing one thing. 100 plus r by 3. That's the answer. So again, the simple thing, you have to just sync the rate of interest and the time period. So in this case, it was r% per annum, so I converted it to be r by 12% per month, and then multiplied it by 4, and basically doing the same thing again and again. That's it, nothing else. All right, pause the video and try this third question, please. All right. Now it says that if $1 becomes $10 in 50 years at simple interest, then rate percent per annum in percent is. Now, the first thing that you need to understand about this question is when it says that if $1 becomes $10. So if $1 becomes $10, see, this is the initial principal amount. And this here is not the interest earned. This here, it's not the interest earned. It is basically the final amount. Because it says that $1 became $10. It became $10. When it becomes $10, it's the final amount. So in this question, the principal is given to you as $1 and the final amount is given to you as $10. Don't take this to be your interest. Otherwise, you'll get your answer incorrect. Don't take this to be the interest. This is not the interest, this is the final amount. $1 becomes $10. So you can say that your interest will be amount minus principal, that is $10 minus $1, and that will be $9. Why? Because we know that amount is principal plus the interest, so interest is amount minus the principal. Now you can go back to the formula, that is simple interest is equal to PRT divided by 100. So $9 is equal to $1 into rate into time, that is 50 years divided by 100. It cancel the $2 also, and rate will become like 18%. This is 18% per annum. So your answer is simply 18. If you would have taken it to be 10, then your answer would have become 20, which would be wrong, of course. Okay, so when it says it becomes, that means it's basically the final amount. That is basically the final amount. So simple interest, frankly, it's very simple. As the name says, you just need to remember three things. That is how to calculate simple interest, how to calculate amount, and you just have to ensure that the unit of rate of interest and time period are in sync with each other. That's it, nothing else is required. What's interesting and what's confusing also is compound interest. What's interesting and what's confusing is basically compound interest. So we're going to understand this in detail, like what exactly is compound interest. So first of all, what is compound interest? How do you differentiate simple interest and compound interest? What are the similarities? What are the dissimilarities? Okay, let's start with the definition. What is compound interest? Now, when we spoke regarding simple interest, I told you simple interest is the simplest form of interest which is calculated only on the principal amount, only on the initial principal amount. That's why the simple interest for first year is equal to simple interest of second year is equal to simple interest for third year, and so on and so forth. It doesn't change because the initial principal is not changing. But that is so not the case with compound interest. That is so not the case with compound interest. When you talk about calculating compound interest, you calculate interest not only on principal but also on all previous years interest earned. A very, very, very important point. The first thing is you need to understand what it is exactly. Then only you will be able to understand how to calculate it. So what is compound interest, or what effectively do we calculate? What kind of interest do we calculate when we talk about compound interest? So it's an interest which is not only calculated on the principal value but also on all previous years interest earned. On all previous years. I'm not saying only the previous year, on all previous years interest earned. Okay, now let's understand exactly. Let's say you have $100 with you. You go to a bank and you deposit the money. The bank told you that, okay, we can give you 10% rate of interest for 1 year. You said, all right, fine. You deposit the money, and if you're receiving a 10% interest on $100, then you'll be earning an interest of 100 into 10 divided by 100, which is equal to 10. P into R into T divided by 100. Or if you want, you can convert that. You can go back to the percentage video, like how do you convert percentage into an absolute value. So you take that value, you multiply by that percent and divide by 100. So basically the bottom line is you will be earning an interest of 10. You will be earning an interest of $10. You deposited $100, you got an interest of 10% per annum. So after 1 year, you got an interest of $10, which now will make your amount to be $110. Now, this 100 here is basically your principal, and this $10 is basically your first year's interest. So I'm going to write it as I1, which means this $110 comprises of two things. That is the principal value and the first year's interest. That is the principal value and the first year's interest. You said, all right, fine, I got $110 after 1 year. That's not a bad deal. Let me deposit this $110 again. You deposited this $110 again. Again, you got the same rate of interest, that is 10% per annum. Now 10% per annum on $110 will give you $11. You can calculate also. 110 into 10 by 100, that will give you $11. That means you will now receive a total of $11, which is basically your interest for the second year. Which is basically your interest for the second year. Now observe carefully. Observe carefully. Your I2 is greater than I1. Your I2 is greater than I1. Your I2 basically comprises of two things. If I dig this further, this I2 comprises of two things. That is $10 and $1. 10 plus 1 make 11. Now, when you talk about 110, when you talk about $110 which was deposited by me for second year, this 110 basically comprised of two things. That is the principal amount as well as the first year's interest. That is the principal amount as well as the first year's interest. Now, when you'll calculate 10% on this principal amount, when you'll calculate 10% on this principal amount, that is 10% of $100, you'll end up getting $10. You'll end up getting $10, which was exactly the scenario for the first year. You wanted 10% on 100, you got $10. You got $10. But what is additional for second year? What is additional for second year? The additional thing that we have for second year is the interest. Is this interest, which is basically equal to $10. Which is basically equal to $10. Now, when you're going to calculate 10% on $10, when you're going to calculate 10% on $10, you'll end up making a dollar extra. You'll end up making a dollar extra. Now, this $1 that you're earning, this $1 that you're earning is basically your interest on interest. This is the interest that you have received on the first year's interest. That is the interest that you have received on first year's interest. This 110 comprised of two things, the initial principal and the first year's interest. You got an interest of $11 which comprised of two things, that is $10 and $1. So $10 is 10% of 100, $1 is 10% of 10. So you can see that your interest is increasing. Apart from that, you're not only earning interest on principal, you're also earning interest on all previous year's interest. Let's go a step further. Let's go to year number 3, just to make things more clear to us. So what's going to happen for the third year? Now it will become $121. 110 plus 11 is 121. Now this 121 will consist of couple of things. So please pay attention. This 121 will consist of a principal value which is $100. This will include I1, which is the first year's interest on principal, which is 10. This will also include I2, which is 11. And this I2 includes two things, that is $10 and $1. Now this $10 is the interest on principal, and this $1 is interest on interest. Okay, so it comprises of four things. See, understand, this 121 comprises of four things: 100 principal value, 10 first year's interest on principal, another 10 which is second year's principal, second year's interest on principal, and one which is interest on first year's interest. I'll repeat myself again. This 121 consists of four things: $100 which is the principal, $10 which is the interest on first year's principal, another $10 which is the interest on second year's principal, that is $100, and a $1 which is interest on first year's interest. Okay, now again the bank gave you an interest of $10 on it, sorry, 10% on it, not $10, my mistake. You received an interest of 10% again, and this time you got an interest of 12.1, which will now make your amount as 133.1, which will now make your amount as 133.1. Now this 12.1, what is this and where is this 12.1 coming from? Everyone knows that this 12.1 is coming from 10% of 121. No brainer in this. But what all does it comprise of? So first thing that it comprises of is, it comprises of $10. It comprises of $10, which is basically 10% of 100. That is this 100. 10% of this 100. That is the principal value. Second thing that it's going to comprise of is $1. That is the interest on first year's interest on principal. That is this $10. Then it will also comprise of another $1, that is interest on second year's interest on principal, that is from this $10. And then at last it's going to comprise of $0.1, which is interest on interest on interest, which is interest on interest on interest. See, the point is, I know this is becoming a bit more complicated. The point which I want you to understand here is that I'm going to make you understand this in a more simplified fashion, no denying on that part. The point that I'm trying to make out here is that, see, what you need to understand is, when you talk about compound interest, it's not the interest which you calculate only on the principal. It also comprises of the interest which you calculate on all previous years' interest. It's principal plus on all previous years' interest. Whatever interest you have earned, whatever interest you have acquired, we'll be calculating interest on those things also. This is the bottom line of compound interest. This is the bottom line of compound interest. Now I'm going to explain you this entire thing again. There's a reason for that in a much more simplified fashion. We're going to take up easier values. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to compare simple interest and compound interest. So let's say that the principal amount is $1,000. The rate of interest is 10% per annum. And let's take time period to be 3 years, or let's take it to be 4 years, no problem. Let's take it to be 4 years. So I'm going to have year 1, I'm going to have year 2, I'm going to have year 3, I'm going to have year 4. Now I told you that when you talk about simple interest, it's an interest which is calculated only on the principal value. It's an interest which is calculated only on the principal value. And the simple interest doesn't change. Like the simple interest for first year is equal to simple interest for second year is equal to simple interest for third year, and so on and so forth. So you can calculate simple interest quite conveniently. That will be 1000 into 10. Let's just calculate for 1 year. The values are going to be the same for second, third and fourth year. Divide by 100, which is basically like $100, which is basically like $100. So for the first year it's $100, or I'm going to omit this sign of dollars because then it becomes a bit cumbersome also for me. This is 100, this is also 100, this is also 100, and this is also 100. It doesn't change at all. Simple interest is fairly simple to calculate. Now what's interesting is the compound interest. Now understand, for the first year, now this point is very critical, this point is very important for exam. For the first year, apart from principal, we do not have any additional interest. Like when you talk about calculating interest for the first time, you simply have the principal value, whether you have compound interest or whether you have simple interest, right? This is what the logic says. So for the first year, simple interest and compound interest is exactly equal. You need to remember this. You can make a note of this also. For the first year, simple interest and compound interest is exactly the same. There is no difference at all. There is no difference. Simple interest and compound interest is exactly the same for first year. There is no difference, because in both the cases you are calculating interest only on the principal value. You are calculating interest only on the principal value, that's it, nothing else. So for the first year they are always equal. Now let's see what's going to happen when you go to the second year. Now irrespective of which year, irrespective you will be calculating compound interest for which year, you will be always calculating compound interest from the principal value. That you will always do. So no matter what's going to happen, 100 will always be there, because you will be calculating interest on the principal value, that's for sure. It's just that you're going to have something extra. It's just that you're going to have something extra. Now while calculating the interest, while calculating the compound interest for second year, you'll be calculating interest on interest of the first year. That is, what I mean is, apart from this 100 that you will be getting from the principal value, you will also be calculating 10% of this 100. That is the first year's interest. You will also be calculating 10% of this 100. That is the first year's interest. So 10% of this 100 will come out to be 10. So in total, your second year's interest will become 110. If you remember the case that we took when we spoke regarding the bank, for the first year we got an interest of 10. For the second year we got an interest of 11, if you remember that. In this case we are getting it to be 110. The only reason is that in that case I took principal to be 100. In this case, I'm taking it to be 1000. So there's an additional 0, that's it. Now when you come to the second year, apart from the 100, that is the interest that you will be earning on the principal, you will be calculating 10% on this 100, that is the first year's 100, that is 10. You will be calculating 10% of this 100, that is the second year's interest on principal. You'll also be calculating 10% on this 10, which is interest on interest. So that will be 1. So when you talk about compound interest, it's interest not only on the principal but on all previous years' interest. I specifically wrote all previous years' interest. Now when you go to the fourth year, this 100 is from the principal. Apart from this, you will be getting 10% of this 100, which is 10. 10% of this 100, which is another 10. 10% of this 10, which is another 1. 10% of this 100, which is another 10. 10% of this 10, which is another 1. 10% of this 10, which is another 1. And 10% of this one, which is another 0.1. So this entire thing is your interest for the fourth year. This is what you need to understand regarding compound interest. Now, interestingly, if you'll observe for the past 20 minutes that we have been discussing compound interest, I haven't taught you how to calculate compound interest. I did not give you any formula. Because I don't want you to learn one. I want you to understand what is compound interest. See, interest is a topic which is basically an extrapolation of the chapter percentages. And if you think about it, compound interest is nothing but simple interest in disguise. If you know the principal value of each year, because the principal value will keep on changing. If you know the principal value of each year, you can simply use the formula to calculate simple interest. Like I know for the first year it's 1000. If I know for second year it's going to be 1100, why use the formula for compound interest? Simply use the formula of simple interest for second year, taking the principal to be 1100. So compound interest is nothing, it's simply simple interest in disguise, that's it. But anyways, let's not go that deep. This is what you need to understand. This is the difference between simple interest and compound interest which you need to understand. Okay. So the point is, the bottom line is, if you draw the graph also, like nobody's going to ask you the graph, but anyways, let's draw it. Let's say this is the time period on x-axis and on the y you have interest. So when you talk about simple interest is going to be a straight line, something like this. It's constant, it won't change. But when you talk about compound interest, it's going to be a curve like this. It's going to keep on rising. Okay, you cannot like, don't think about this. Okay, this is going to be a line, something like this. No, this is wrong. This is incorrect. It's not going to be a straight line. It's going to be a curve. I can prove that also to you. For the first year, my compound interest is 100. For second, it's 1110. For third, it's 121. And for fourth, it is 110, 20, 30, 31, 32, 33, 33.1, 133.1. So you can see that there is no constant change. Like the terms are not in arithmetic progression. They are not in GP also, no denying on that part. But okay, so difference is 10, then it's 11, then it is 12.1. So yes, I think it's a GP, my mistake, it's a GP. There's a common ratio of 1.1. So it's going to be a curve. Okay. So the compound interest rate being positive, it keeps on rising. If the rate is positive, then the compound interest keeps on rising. But the simple interest is constant. Alright, so this is how you define compound interest. Okay, this is how you define compound interest. Alright, now how do we calculate it? Let's try and understand that part also now. So when you talk about compound interest, unlike the case of simple interest where we had the formula to calculate simple interest, in case of compound interest, we have the formula to calculate the final amount. We have the formula to calculate the final amount. And it is calculated as P 1 plus R by 100 to the power n, where P is your principal value, R is your rate of interest, and N is your time period. And N is your time period. This is the formula to calculate the final amount. Okay. And if they ask you to calculate the compound interest, then you know the formula, you know the relationship, that is amount minus principal. That is amount minus principal. Okay, now we're going to solve one basic question on this, and then we're going to move on forward with bit more theory part on compound interest. Okay, so probably as far as this video is concerned, we'll simply be solving the question, otherwise it's going to go long. So then the next part of this we'll be discussing in the second video. Okay, anyways, let's move on to the question first of all. That's more important. So pause the video and try this question, please. Alright, let's try this question. Okay, one thing I almost forgot to tell you is that whenever you'll see a question on compound interest, so in that question you will come across this word that your money is being compounded. Your money is being you'll have this word either compounded, or they will use the word compounding. They'll use either of the two. If this word is not given, then that means that question is on simple interest. Okay, that's how you identify, because sometimes students do ask, sir, how do we figure out that whether the question is on simple interest or on compound interest? So this is how you identify whether the question is on simple interest or compound interest. Alright, let's get going then. Let's draw this question number 4. John deposited $A in an account and earned an annual interest rate of 10% compounded annually. 1 year later, he deposited an additional $B if no other transaction was made during the 2 years, and the account balance at the end of 2 years was $P. Then find A in terms of B and P. Now, two ways of doing this. The first way, which I would prefer, is I'm gonna solve this question one by one. That is what I mean. What I mean to say is that I'll first tackle first year. If I'm going to tackle it year by year, I can basically use the concept of simple interest itself. I don't have to go into compound interest. It's not required. Okay. So if I'm going to do it year by year, now let's talk about first year. He deposited $8 and he got an interest of 10%. Now whether it is compounded or no compounded, it doesn't make any sense, because I have a principal value which is A. I can either use simple interest or compound interest. Now if my principal is A and rate of interest is 10, which means the interest that I will be earning will be equal to A into 10 into 1 divided by 100, which is equal to 0.1A. Which is equal to 0.1A. And the amount that will become after 1 year will be equal to A plus 0.1A, and that will be equal to 1.1. It will become 1.1. Now when you go to the second year, because now your amount is 1.1, it says that a year later he deposited an additional $B. So now you can say that if you talk about second year individually, now you can say that my principal will now become 1.1A, which is the amount from first year, and the additional money, that is B, that you have deposited. Now you take this as principal and again calculate with the help of simple interest. Why even go to the compound interest formula? It's not required. So now the second year's interest will become 1.1. You see, I am saying second year's interest. I'm not saying interest for 2 years. There's a difference. So this is 1.1a plus b into 10 into 1 divided by 100, which is 1.1 square a plus 1.1b. So you basically have 1.1 square a plus 1.1 b, and that will be equal to p. Now you just have to calculate a in terms of p and b. Let's do that. So what can I do? I'm going to remove this first year's case. So I'm going to get that 1.1 square a is equal to p minus 1.1 b, or a is equal to p minus 1.1 into b divided by 1.1 square. So this is equal to p divided by 1.1 square minus b divided by 1.1, and that's how you can find a in terms of p and b. And that's your answer to this question. So as I've told you that compound interest is nothing but simple interest in disguise. If you keep on changing your principal value, simply use simple interest. Why use compound interest? Why waste your time? Alright then, let's keep it till here guys as far as this video is concerned. So in this video, the essential part, the important part was to understand what is simple interest, what is compound interest, how do you differentiate the two, how do you define the two, and how do you not solve because we haven't done the questions on compound interest yet. Basically, how do you differentiate the two and what are the similarities between the two things. Okay, the definition part was important, and I hope you have now understand what exactly is compound interest. See, again, understand in this chapter, it's not about the formulas, it's about understanding what is interest. That's more important. Alright then guys, let's keep it till here as far as this video is concerned. And please subscribe to the channel for more videos and exam related content for SAT, GMAT and GRE. If you have any concerns, if you have any doubts, if you have any questions, you know how to reach me. And if you're looking for personalized classes, you can always connect with me for SAT, GMAT or GRE. And please share the video with your friends also. Please subscribe to the channel. And thank you so much. Thank you so much for your comments. It's really motivating. So I'll try to keep on making more and more videos so that I'm able to cover the entire content for all the 3 exams. So thank you so much guys. Keep watching and keep learning. Thank you so much.